Hello, this is Kavura, and I'm back with my review of the two books, The Romulan War by Michael A. Martin. Now, I already did my review of the books that came before this. There was The Good That Men Do and Kobayashi Maru, and they were both by Michael A. Martin and Andy Mangels. And so this two-part Romulan War is actually a follow-up to those two books. So first we have The Romulan War Beneath the Raptor's Wing, which was book 1. And I'll just read the back of the book first. At the start of the 21st century, unconditional war swept across the earth, a war that engulfed the great and the small, the rich and the poor, giving no quarter. Each side strove for unconditional victory, and as battle built upon battle, the living began to envy the dead. Chastised by the cataclysm that they had unleashed, the governments of earth came together. Humanity vowed to put an end to war and to strive for the betterment of every living creature. A united earth created Starfleet, an interstellar agency whose mission was to explore the cosmos, to come in peace for all mankind. It was a naive wish that was battered by interstellar realities, yet man persists in the belief that peace is the way. Banding together with other powers to form a coalition of planets, humanity hopes that the strength each can offer the other will allow for peaceful exploration. However, the rise of the coalition strikes dread within the Romulan Star Empire. They feel its growing reach will cut them off from what is rightfully theirs. The Romulans know that the alliance is fragile, that the correct strategy could turn allies into foes. Perfecting a way of remotely controlling coalition ships and using them as weapons against one another, the Romulans hope to drive a wedge of suspicion and mistrust between these new allies. One Starfleet captain uncovers this insidious plot, Jonathan Archer of the Enterprise. Determined not to lose what they had gained, outmanned and outgunned, the captains of Starfleet stand tall, vowing to defend every inch of coalition space until the tide begins to turn. The Romulans now plan to strike at what they see as the heart of their problem. With nothing left to lose, the Romulan Star Empire engages in all-out war against humanity, determined once and for all to stop the human menace from spreading across the galaxy. So that was the back of the book, and it was it's one of the larger books, the trade paperback size, and so it had a lot of stuff there on that back cover. So this was, as far as the story, some of the parts I thought were slow and kind of hard to get through, like the parts with the reporter Gannett Brooks. And you may recall from Enterprise, Gannett Brooks was the former girlfriend of Travis Mayweather. And from the previous two books, we still have Trip disguised as a Romulan, and he's still doing his Romulan spy business. And Admiral Valdor of the Romulans, he is still in this. He's still the one who was mainly behind what the Romulans are going to do in the war, and he has the Praetor's ear. He's the one the Praetor depends on to have all of the troops ready and to get all the battles won. The Vulcans actually pull out of the war. T'Pau feels that she's following the teachings of Surak, which is basically peace. So she says she can't really fight this war if she's trying to lead the way for peace for Vulcans. But she also knows about the Romulan Vulcan history. There are a few people on Romulus and a few people on Vulcan that know that the Romulans are actually an offshoot of Vulcans, and they both want to keep it a secret. If everyone knew that the Romulans were related to Vulcans, that would make the humans, and especially the Andorians, very suspicious of the Vulcans. I mean, even more suspicious than they already were. And the ships, as mentioned on the summary in the back of the book, the Romulans have a device that can remotely control the other coalition ships. We've seen it with the Andorian ships and some of the human ships and the Tellarite ships. The Vulcans think that just because the Romulans had similar beginnings as a race, their technology also developed similarly, and it would be easier for the Romulans to take over the Vulcan ships. So that's another reason that T'Pau doesn't want to get involved in the war, but of course the humans, Tellarites and Andorians, don't know that's a reason. I do like that these books mentioned other things, like other planets that have been mentioned on the original series. Berengaria 7 is actually in this book, and they actually have dragons on the planet. That was actually mentioned in the episode This Side of Paradise, when Spock said that he saw a dragon on Berengaria 7. And Altair 6, which was mentioned in Amok Time, and Deneva, the planet from Operation Annihilate, they're also mentioned. I mean, it's neat to see that kind of continuity. And Archer in these books actually gets promoted to Commodore. So that was neat too. He's leading a whole fleet to take back Berengaria, one of the planets that was taken over by the Romulans. So at least Archer got his promotion. And the book follows a little of the other characters. It's mostly about T'Pol and Trip and Archer, but it does have some things with Hoshi and Mayweather. They both kind of thought about leaving the Enterprise. Well, Mayweather actually does leave the Enterprise in a huff because of what happened in the previous book, where Archer had to destroy a ship. Then the ship was called the Kobayashi Maru, and of course we're sure that that's where Starfleet will later get the name for that test, the Kobayashi Maru, the no-win scenario. Hoshi, well, she doesn't leave the Enterprise, but she does have these thoughts, and she does decide that this ship is where she needs to be. And another interesting thing about continuity was they brought up Captain Dunsel. Now you remember the original series episode, The Ultimate Computer, where they said Dunsel is a part that serves no useful purpose. But in this book there is actually a captain whose last name is Dunsel. So now we know where they supposedly got that from. Let's see, Shran makes an appearance in this book. Of course he's there. Scone. And Scone is a Vulcan, and of course he is Sarek's father, who has been mentioned on Star Trek. He's in the book. And let's see, there's a planet called Achernar, which is a Romulan planet that's used several times in other books. It's mentioned as a Romulan planet. The book even mentions an historical event on Earth that was also mentioned in a book called Homus the Hunter, which I've also reviewed with Jen on Ladies Trek Library. And that's probably just a coincidence, but it's funny that the two books happen to reference the same story from Earth history. And it's funny, the book even mentions, it seems to have some references to Dune. You have the Harkonnen people, like Dune had Harkonnen with an R. This book has Harkonnen, which is a very similar name. Plus the book has a family whose last name is Idaho, which reminds me of Duncan Idaho from Dune. A very strange reference there, crossing over the fandoms. And of course, from the episode Balance of Terror, we do have several people in Starfleet with the name Styles, because in Balance of Terror, Lieutenant Styles actually said that back during the Earth-Romulan War, there was a Captain Styles in service and 2 commanders and several junior officers. So the ships, remember in Balance of Terror, they said there was no visual ship-to-ship communication during the Earth-Romulan War, and that kind of got messed up on Enterprise, because on Enterprise they did have the ship-to-ship visual communication. So in this book they try to explain it just by saying that the Romulans just didn't want to talk that way, so that's why they never had the visual. That's why no one ever found out what the Romulans looked like. And I had always pictured it, after Balance of Terror, that the whole war was fought in space between ships. But the book actually has battles happening on planets. The Romulans actually did send troops to the surface of planets, but they always wore helmets, so no one saw what they looked like. And, of course, there had to be some Romulans that got killed on the planets. According to the book, the Romulans were, they cleaned up after themselves. They picked up all of the dead Romulan bodies so that nothing would be left for anybody to see. I don't know if that could really happen, because it just seems like, it's a war. How do they have time to pick up their dead bodies and destroy them or do something with them? And how could they actually find every single dead body and not accidentally leave some behind? But that's something that happened. And in Balance of Terror, it was referred to as the Earth-Romulan War, which seems strange because in the book we know it was supposed to be between the Romulans and the coalition of planets which included Earth and Vulcan and Andor and Tellar. But since, the Vulcans left the war, also in the course of the story, the Andorians and the Tellarites left the war for a time. Oops, not to give away too much, but it did for a long time become just a war between Earth and the Romulans.
This is Mark Nacareto, creator of The Romulan War, a Star Trek fan production. The Romulan War is set in the Prime Trek universe in the 22nd century during the era of Captain Archer and the NX-01 Enterprise. Our film covers the war between Earth and the Romulan Empire, the key historical event which leads to the creation of the United Federation of Planets. For complete info on our film and all the other story content, visit our website at www.theromulanwar.com. Jolan True.
And getting into the second book, which was called The Romulan War to Brave the Storm, and I'll just read the back of this book. Earth stands alone. The coalition of planets has shattered, with Vulcan, Andor, and Tellar abrogating the treaty. Their pledge to come to the mutual defense of any power that is attacked has been shunted aside. Horrified by how easily the Romulans can seize control of their advanced ships, turning them into weapons, Andor and Tellar have joined Vulcan on the sidelines. Humanity is now the only thing that stands between the Romulan Star Empire and total domination of the galaxy. To drive humans from the stars, the Romulans employ ruthless and murderous tactics, and even dare to strike on the Vulcan homeworld with the hopes of demoralizing their Vulcan brethren. Heartened by their victories, the Romulans carry their all-out war assault closer to the heart of humanity, Earth. But the tattered remains of Starfleet stand unwavering, with the resolution that never again would any enemy strike ever reach Earth. On the front lines of the Earth-Romulan War is the United flagship, the United Starship Enterprise. Her captain, Jonathan Archer, has seen his vessel of exploration become a battleship. Once hailed for his work bringing the coalition of planets into existence, Archer is now a pariah. Undaunted, the captain keeps fighting, searching for allies, and determined to do his duty to save Earth and forge a new federation of planets. So that was To Brave the Storm, and that book has, for one thing, it has the Vissians. Remember the race from the episode Cogenitor, where they had the three different genders? It was just neat. There's a little scene with the Vissians, even though they're not a major part of the book. Trip and T'Pol are still in the book. They still have their telepathic connection together. It's something that they had from a mind meld. And it actually works across great distances, which we haven't seen as much of on the show until Discovery, but we do see it here. And Trip, of course, is he's still a spy. He still has his pointed ears from the plastic surgery that he got in the previous books. And he does get to go to Vulcan and then back to infiltrate the Romulans again. The last battle in the book is on the planet Charon, which has been mentioned in some Star Trek reference books, but not in canon. that's supposed to be where the last battle of the Romulan War was fought. And Charon, we think it's not spelled the same way as the Charon from Let That Be Your Last Battlefield, so it's not the same planet. Charon is supposed to be a Romulan planet. I do like all of the Romulan intrigue in these books. You know, whenever you talk about Romulans, you do think of all of these secret plots. There was a lot of that, and a lot of people in disguise, a lot of people that you don't know who is who, a lot of twists and turns, especially between Vulcans and Romulans. Someone you think is one race, you find out they're another, and sometimes the person themselves might not even know if they're Vulcan or Romulan because they're a sleeper agent. They've been made to think that they're one thing when they're something else. And the Romulans wanted to negotiate over subspace so that no one would know they were related to the Vulcans. Again, this was something mentioned in Balance of Terror, but when you see the technology now, you know, the way that it doesn't fit as much into what was established in Balance of Terror, they try to have a different way of explaining it. And they do have outposts. Remember, in Balance of Terror, there were like 8 outposts surrounding the neutral zone. At this time, there are only 2 that were apparently there even before the war, but now they are there to guard the neutral zone. And Styles is actually the commander of one of them. And as another little tidbit, T'Pau turns down a seat on the Federation Council. Of course, we know that she's going to do that, but I just found it strange that she did it in one of these books because I just thought that would have happened much later in my mind. So overall, these 2 books were not as good as I expected. I thought they were not as good as the 2 books before them, The Good That Men Do and the Kobayashi Maru. But for Romulan books, I think they were good if you do like the Romulans, even though the first one, Beneath the Raptor's Wing, that one had some slower parts. I thought the second one, To Brave the Storm, was a little easier to read. It was a much faster read. But together they do make an interesting story, and they do fill in a lot of the gaps, about the war and how it came to be and how it ended. And a lot of stuff about Archer and Trip. I mean, at least Trip isn't dead like the way Enterprise ended, saying that he's dead. So overall, the books were good, but not great. So I think that they could have been better, but as far as continuing the story and finding out about the Romulans, because I always love Romulan stories, they were an interesting read. Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long, and may the Force be with you. Nanu Nanu.